Long time no see. Still childless? A defective product who can't even show me grandchildren. I've had my fair share of issues with my mother-in-law Susan, and even now, thinking back on it can fill me with rage. The harassment I've faced for being unable to have children has been excessive. I don't know how badly she wants grandchildren, but it's unfair to blame me entirely for not being able to have children. To be called defective, it's astonishing how cruel some people can be. Currently, I'm at the park. And I'm not alone. My child is over there. The look on my mother-in-law's face when I said that. The grandchild she had been longing for, desperately wanted, was right there. Yet, reality can be cruel. She's oblivious to the fact that what she's done is coming back to haunt her. It's about time she realized. I won't let her pretend to forget now. I'm Yvette, a 45-year-old housewife. Having always loved children, I earned my teaching credential in college and worked as a teacher in a public elementary school. Though challenging, the joy of being involved in the children's growth made it feel like my calling. I was devoted to my job, but one day, a childhood friend introduced me to someone she knew. That was how I met Sean, my husband. Sean was 25 at the time. He had graduated from college and was working as a social studies teacher in a middle school. He used to worry about the lack of opportunities to meet someone, as he spent his college years focused solely on his studies and hadn't really dated much. He expressed a desire to experience dating, which led our mutual friend to think we might be a good match, given our shared profession. When our friend introduced Sean to me, I wasn't seeing anyone and was solely focused on my work. I wasn't particularly excited about the meeting, but felt I should at least meet him once, out of respect for my friend. I remember that day clearly. We had arranged to meet at a cafe, but he was late. I was about to leave after waiting another 30 minutes when I saw someone rushing into the cafe.
Sorry for keeping you waiting.
Sean arrived, out of breath, barely able to stand.
No, it's okay. I was just starting to worry about what had happened. Actually, a student asked me for book recommendations. We got caught up talking, and I lost track of time.
I couldn't help but burst into laughter hearing his explanation. At the same time, I knew he wasn't a bad person. Anyone that engaged with his students over books to the extent of forgetting his commitments must be well loved. And imagining Sean so involved in recommending books to his student, I couldn't help but find him endearing.
Sorry for laughing so much at our first meeting. I want to know more about you.
Really? Seeing your smile, I feel like my nervousness just went away.
You were nervous?
Yes. Well, I didn't expect to meet such a wonderful woman, Sean said, somewhat shyly.
Come on. I'm almost 35, you know? I'm probably quite a bit older than you.
I'm 25, but age doesn't matter to me. From there, Sean and I continued our conversation, getting to know each other better. His passion for work, compassionate nature, and the respect he commanded from his students became apparent. It seemed Sean had a good impression of me as well. It's been a short while since we met, but I would regret it if I didn't say this now. Would you consider a relationship with me, with marriage in mind? Sean looked at me, his face flushed. My mind was made up.
If it's with Sean, I think we could have a good relationship. I look forward dating you.
Time spent with Sean was always enjoyable. Besides our dates, I found myself wanting to be with him more and more. Then, Sean proposed. From the moment I met Yvette, I always hoped we could be together forever. Please marry me.
Yes. I feel like I can be happy with you too,
I answered without hesitation. We went through with our family meetings and got married. Marrying someone I love and living together was something I couldn't have imagined just a while ago. As we prepared for marriage, we discussed our careers and the possibility of having children. Sean has always respected my thoughts and life choices, which is one of the reasons I fell for him.
I want to continue working even after we're married. Above all, I love my current job as a teacher.
I can see that in you, Yvette. But what about children? I would like to have them if possible, but I want to respect your decision when it comes to actually having them. Of course, I want children too. It might be tough since we'll be working, but I hope we can have a child sooner rather than later. Sean and I decided to try for a pregnancy within the limits of what our jobs would allow. This is something that can't be forced, it's a gift. However, I didn't realize that an ominous cloud was looming over our peaceful life. I'll be off to club practice for a bit.
Got it. You'll be back by dinner, right? Take care.
After seeing Sean off, I was drinking coffee alone in the living room when the doorbell rang. Oh, Yvette. Hello.
Ah, Susan, hello. Sean's at school for club practice. What brings you by here?
Then Sean's mom, my mother-in-law Susan, seemed momentarily disappointed, but she quickly turned to me and suddenly said, "It's almost been a year since you got married, hasn't it?"
Yes, it has. Thanks for supporting us. That's not what I mean. Before you take care of other people's children, you should have your own. If you can't even manage that, you might as well quit your job.
Susan looked at me with a frustrated expression, as if she felt her message wasn't getting across.
That's quite sudden to say.
Isn't it about time? Or are you waiting until you're in the safe period to tell us?
What? A child?
You're 35, right? Having 2 or 3 children should be normal. I was taken aback by the sudden interrogation about having children. But this is something that can't just be decided on my own, so I decided to be honest. Sean and I are hoping for it. If it happens, you'll be the first to know.
What a carefree thing to say. I don't understand how you can afford to wait.
Her increasingly agitated state confused me. She seemed so calm when we met before the wedding. I'm sorry if I upset you. But this isn't something I can control on my own.
So what? Are you saying it's Sean's fault?
Saying this, Susan barged into the room. Then I heard Susan's voice from inside.
What is this machine? I just bumped my leg on it.
I'm sorry. That's an air purifier.
Air purifier? It's so big.
I have a house dust allergy, so I'm particularly cautious about the air quality. I'm weak to house dust, and I start sneezing uncontrollably. It's there to clean the air. I'm sorry if it's in the way. Then, Susan let out a big sigh.
What? Are you saying you're being indulgent with such things? What? Indulgent, you say? That's right. You keep talking about dust and trash, that's why you're getting weaker. And if you need fresh air, just open a window.
Unfortunately, our apartment on the 2nd floor is located in a busy area, with a lot of traffic and exhaust fumes. Well, but with the exhaust gas, we can't really open it much.
Relying on such nonsensical machines. That's why you can't have children.
Susan's aggressive stance made it clear she believed she was right.
But you want children, right? Then come to my house next week.
But
it's okay. My husband isn't around right now, and I'm the only one there, so you won't be bothering anyone.
It seems like I have no choice but to go. Just thinking about it makes me feel down. The following week, I visited Susan's house.
Come this way.
Susan took my hand and led me into the living room. As soon as I entered the living room, a strange scent hit my nose.
Excuse me, but…
I hesitated, not knowing how to describe the odd scent, and then a cup containing something resembling tea was offered to me.
Yes, this tea is supposed to help regulate your body and make it easier to conceive. What? I have to drink this? And what about yours, Susan? I'm not drinking it. They say good medicine tastes bitter, and I also have to endure the pain of making you drink this.
With its strange color and smell, it seemed impossible to drink. As I hesitated, she opened my bag and shoved something that looked like a paper bag.
What are you doing? Don't just go through my bag like that. Don't talk as if I'm a thief. Drinking 4 cups of this tea a day is supposed to be effective. And here's the next one.
Susan pulled me by the hand to the backyard. Seeing a mountain of laundry, I was puzzled.
What's with all the laundry?
It was all baby items, such as gauze towels, small clothes, and bibs, which obviously weren't Susan's.
A friend gave them to me. Touching and washing baby items is supposed to make it easier to conceive. It's also good practice for when you have a child.
Then, she brought out a large tub and a washboard.
They say if you wash with all your heart, a child will be happy to come to your womb.
Seeing her walk back into the living room alone, without allowing any room for objection, filled me with disbelief. I did want a child and had discussed it with Sean. But considering each other's lives and rhythms, we agreed to wait without rushing. Why was Susan in such a hurry? Though infuriated, I couldn't just leave without doing anything. As instructed, I washed the piled-up baby clothes with the washboard and hung them to dry. Susan, I'm done.
All right, I'll see you day after tomorrow again. Come like today and wash.
No. I have work the day after tomorrow.
Work? You can make time before or after work if you really want children. If you really want them, you'd try even if it means pushing yourself a bit.
Being stubborn myself, I followed Susan's instructions to the letter. After school, I went to Susan's house late into the night and washed unknown children's clothes by hand in the dark and cold. My hands started to chap from washing so many clothes in cold water. Even though I used hand cream as a preventative measure, my hands dried and chapped quickly.
Yvette, what happened to your hands?
Sean looked at me worriedly. I hesitated to tell him the truth. What Susan was doing felt like superstitious nonsense to me, but it involved his mother. And since Sean also wanted children, I was afraid it might sound like I was speaking ill of his mom. Actually, Susan asked me when we're having kids. She said washing baby clothes by hand makes it easier to conceive, so I've been going to her house every other day to wash them. Sean looked at me as if he couldn't believe it.
What? Does she really think doing that will help you conceive?
After a moment of thought, Sean seemed to make a decision.
I'll talk to Mom, so you don't have to go anymore. Actually, Mom has some inheritance from Dad, so she's been trying to live on her own. She said she wouldn't rely on her son or grandchildren. Also, I'm thinking of going to the hospital. The hospital? Why?
Because conceiving isn't just the woman's issue, right? Maybe there's something on my end, and it's better to know. I admired Sean for this. He considered my troubles as his own.
Thank you. But don't push yourself too hard. It's for you, and staying silent would be harder.
But this didn't mean Susan would just settle down.
I talked to Mom. You don't have to go to her house anymore.
Thank you. I'm sorry for making you do this, Sean. Don't worry about it. It turns out, the difficulty conceiving might be because of me. Sean spoke apologetically. But the doctor said it should be okay with medication and regular visits. Let's see how it goes, and if nothing changes, we'll think about what to do next. It seemed like the issue was resolved for now, but it wasn't over yet. A while later, a package arrived at our house. It was from Susan. The package contained several books and a long letter. The letter expressed her anger about me talking to Sean. The books were on pregnancy and parenting, showing signs of age. Honestly, I harbored complex feelings of anger and disbelief towards Susan's actions. Sean seemed to feel the same way after I talked to him. Even after I told her to stop, she's still doing this.
What should we do with these books? Honestly, even if I was told to read them.
Mom probably wants a grandchild so bad that she's lost sight of everything else. I'm really sorry for making you feel uncomfortable. Sean carefully chose his words after some thought. Being in between me and Susan must be incredibly difficult for him.
Even though she's my mom, the one I want to protect most is you, Yvette. If she's going to hurt you carelessly, I'll have to reconsider our relationship.
But she's still your real mom, right? I don't want you to regret anything later. It's inevitable for occasions like weddings and funerals, but other than that, we don't need to interact. I'm truly sorry for not realizing sooner.
Sean bowed deeply. We decided to avoid contact with Susan outside of necessary ceremonies, setting her calls to block and refusing her packages. Sean was apparently sending her a little money privately, but since this was between him and his parent, I chose not to comment this time. For a while, we lived peacefully without seeing Susan. Perhaps Sean was right, stress is the worst for the body, and keeping her away was for the best. About 10 years after Susan's problematic behavior began, I was leisurely sitting on a park bench, savoring a coffee. As I enjoyed my coffee for the first time in a long while, a voice came from behind.
Long time no see. Still childless? A defective product who can't even show me grandchildren.
For a moment, I couldn't recognize who it was. But even though she had become thinner and smaller, it was Susan. The realization that some people never change, even after years, was driven home by her derisive comment calling me defective out of the blue. Her disdainful gaze made the warm coffee I was enjoying suddenly taste cold and bitter. The change in taste due to someone's emotions made me realize anew.
Ah, Susan.
Why haven't you shown your face? Don't tell me you said something unnecessary to Sean again, did you?
No, Susan.
Susan poked at the ground with her cane while saying, "What would you avoid your husband's mother to this extent?" She scrutinized me from head to toe with a look of disdain. Sitting here drinking coffee, enjoying the park by yourself, must be nice. Susan hadn't changed since the day she ordered me to wash a stranger's baby clothes. I had spent the last 10 years peacefully without her. If possible, I didn't want to meet her, but I gathered my courage to speak. "My child is right there." Susan seemed momentarily stunned, then burst into loud laughter, as if the idea of me having a child was absurd. She must have assumed from the start that I could never have children, which is why she could act so carelessly. Thinking only her way of happiness is right and imposing her values on others is something I wish she wouldn't do. Then she suddenly became serious and glared at me. I braced myself for what she might say next. "What are you talking about all of a sudden? You're quite a bit older than Sean, aren't you? There's no way you could have a child." Indeed, I am older than Sean, but it's unfair to conclude that I can't have children because of my age. There are many couples with age gaps who have children without an issue. I inhaled, ready to express my full thoughts.
Like I said.
Then, Susan put her index finger to my lips.
As if saying not to speak any further, she raised her index finger and glared at me.
If you had just listened to me, none of this would have happened. I don't know what you told Sean, but running away like that? A child won't be born to someone so cursed.
I felt the pressure from Susan intensely. After 10 years of estrangement, honestly, it was frightening. The thought of being overwhelmed by her pace made me anxious. While Susan was scolding me, children ran up from a distance, looking at us with worried expressions. Seeing the children's faces like this filled me with guilt.
Mom? What's going on?
Do you know this person? Ah, this person is. I hesitated to tell Maya and Emma the truth. Despite my bitter memories, Susan is their grandmother. Was it right to keep them apart based on my personal feelings and desire not to meet her? I was at a loss for how to introduce them to her. Maya and Emma had never met Susan before, and I hadn't even brought her up in conversation, so they wouldn't suspect she was their grandmother. Then, Maya and Emma started whispering to each other. Trying to be secretive, but I could hear them.
Emma. Could this person be?
Do you think so too, Maya?
Yeah, she was there last time too, no doubt about it.
Susan, pretending not to notice their secret conversation, tried to approach Maya and Emma. She reached out with trembling hands towards them, but both wore indescribable expressions at the gesture. Indeed, from Maya and Emma's perspective, she was a stranger. The sudden approach of trembling hands could only be frightening.
Could it really be Sean's children? My grandchildren?
Susan moved closer to Maya and Emma as if it was a touching reunion. However, Maya and Emma took a couple of steps back and said,
You're the lady who keeps complaining at the grocery store, right? What? What are you talking about?
You thought so too?
I was thinking the same.
Their sudden excitement left me puzzled.
She's always at the grocery store near our school.
Yeah. She's always yelling at the staff.
Wait, what's going on? She's the lady from the grocery store near our school. She's always loudly demanding her money back, so she's quite famous.
Yeah, she only yells at the young staff and says nothing when the manager is around. This was the first I'd heard of it, but it was clear she targeted specific people for her outbursts. It's as if she only attacked the weak.
I'm just teaching them that they should listen to their elders. I'm doing the right thing. I don't believe this.
Maya and Emma looked at me. Seeing me being accused and harassed by the grocery store complaint lady, they decided to take action.
Mom hasn't done anything wrong. Please stop.
Susan, pretending not to hear, moved closer. For Susan, this moment of meeting Maya and Emma was supposed to be touching. Tears even welling up in her eyes.
Really, my grandchildren? Well, let me see your faces since we've finally met. Don't come closer. If something happens to Mom, I'll turn this on.
Emma brandished a security alarm. Seeing the brightly colored, large alarm, Susan seemed to shrink back. Anyone would be taken aback if threatened with an alarm. It's not every day that a grandmother gets treated like a suspicious person by her own grandchildren. I instinctively moved to ensure their safety. Then, Susan started shaking violently.
But
the shock of being outright rejected by the grandchildren she had longed for must have been immense. Susan, now shaking, seemed much smaller. But something else was bothering me more. I decided to press Susan further.
According to Emma and Maya, you've been demanding refunds at the grocery store, right? Why is that? Well, they're selling me things I can't use, and I'm stuck with them.
Susan suddenly became defensive. She insisted she hadn't done anything wrong. I decided to ask Susan something she definitely wouldn't want to hear.
Susan, are you having money troubles?
Is that why you can do such embarrassing things in public?
Embarrassing? That's rude to say to your elder.
She believed she deserved respect and didn't like that I'd hit the nail on her head, hesitating a bit. But normal people would be too embarrassed to only be aggressive towards young staff. You don't feel that embarrassment, Susan. That's impressive.
Enough! Shut up!
Susan clenched her teeth in frustration. Then Maya, with a puzzled look, said,
This person right here, she always brings out an empty container after eating and yells for a refund.
That figures. Waving an empty container around and yelling is quite something.
What? Why would she bring out an empty container? I don't know. But she said something about poor old people doing this.
The children's words made me realize something. Are you perhaps struggling with money?
Yeah. It's terrible, getting old and having money troubles.
As far as I remember, Susan's house was filled with branded goods. She probably squandered all the inheritance from my father-in-law. It must be hard living in financial difficulty.
Understanding that, could you send me a little money? 150K, no, even 100K would do.
I dodged Susan's gaze as she approached and said,
I refuse. What? After all you've done, now you expect help when you're in trouble? That's too convenient, isn't it?
Then, Susan glared at me in frustration.
You're really heartless, aren't you? Not extending a helping hand to a frail elderly person.
She looked at me as if she deserved help, as always.
But there's no need for that, is there? You reap what you sow. How pitiful these children must be, raised by a parent like you.
Then, Maya and Emma stood in front of me and said to Susan,
We're not pitiful at all. We love our mom, and you shouldn't say such horrible things. If you say anything more horrible, we'll really go to the police.
Susan was speechless at Maya and Emma's sudden counterattack. Imagine being told by your much-desired grandchildren that they would go to the police. I wouldn't be able to bear it.
In that case, shall I give you something you really need, Susan? Really? Of course. Just wait here for a moment.
I ran to a nearby store and bought something.
What is this? Do I look old enough to need this?
I placed adult diapers in front of Susan. The package, prominently labeled Refreshing Care Diapers, was enough to intimidate Susan. Susan's face turned red with anger, looking almost like a lobster.
You made me wash children's clothes until my hands were in pain, saying it was practice for when I had kids, remember?
Susan became visibly uncomfortable. After mumbling for a bit, she whispered,
That was for your own good. Besides, I really wanted grandchildren. All my friends had them, and I was the only one without. So, it's the same for me, then. It's for Susan's good. And wanting grandchildren just because others have them, are you a child?
Susan glared at me resentfully.
Saying such things to an elder and treating them like a child, you'll be cursed, just you watch. It's okay for you, but not for others. What a convenient morality you have.
Then Sean's voice came from behind. He happened to see us and came over.
I can't believe it. Are you still harassing Yvette? It's not harassment, just a little.
I relayed the earlier conversation to Sean. Apparently, Susan is out of money. She's been causing trouble at the local grocery store. I remember when I visited her house, it was filled with branded bags and wallets. Sean's usually calm expression turned sharp.
Mom! Weren't you going to live on Dad's inheritance without bothering us? And didn't you promise not to approach Yvette anymore?
No,
Running into Yvette was just a coincidence. A coincidence? In such a big park, and specifically a children's park, you just happened to run into Yvette? Who would believe that?
Susan fell silent. Sean's accusation was likely correct.
You've always loved branded things, buying them nonstop. Are you still doing that? Well, I just bought bags and shoes to match the place, and then it just increased. Even though I used to send money from my allowance, to think you've been buying bags and wallets just to see them lying around. Didn't I tell you before to only buy what you need? Wasting money like that, I feel betrayed.
Then Susan clung to Sean.
This is a mistake. It's not true. What's the mistake? The lie? I got it. Mom's the liar. I can't deal with this anymore, so don't contact me. And obviously, no more money from me.
Sean turned his back, never to look at Susan again. Susan collapsed right there. Being rejected by her own son, she might never recover.
If only you had just hurried up and had kids, while I could still look after them. It's not like I had kids for you, Susan.
I left those words behind and went on my way home with Maya and Emma, never wanting to see her again, and believing it would be so. I warned Maya and Emma to be careful around Susan when going to and from school or cram school, but it seems they never encountered her. Relieved at that, one day, I received a call from the hospital. Apparently, a few days after meeting us, she had tripped and fallen at a step in the neighborhood supermarket. When asked to come to the hospital to pick her up, there she was, shrunken in the bed, with the supermarket manager and a police officer present. Susan had a bad fall, breaking her leg. Upon inquiry, it turned out she had been sneakily taking items from the ready-made food section, and the store had been watching her.
No, this is, well, I don't want to hear any excuses. It's embarrassing, so don't contact me again. It can't be helped. Sean used to send money before, but now that's stopped.
I was at a loss for words. And nobody would tell me your contact. I was lonely.
Well, that makes sense.
It seems she had been desperately trying to contact me by any means. Someone must have told her our whereabouts, hoping that would happen. Susan always thought that if she demanded, people would listen. But I had taken precautions in advance. I had told various contacts about Susan's actions and the unpleasant past, while also asking them not to share my contact details. I couldn't bear the thought of meeting someone as selfish as Susan again. In the end, nobody had given Susan our contact details. I heard that some even blocked her calls, indicating she was quite disliked within the group. Anyone would keep their distance from such a person. Hearing she was blocked didn't surprise me at all. Eventually, Susan spent her hospital days alone, stressed and lashing out at hospital staff, receiving stern warnings. It's okay for now, but nobody could guess what she's going to do next. Continuing to rampage without realizing how disliked she is so typical of Susan. I am living happy days with Maya, Emma, and my husband. I worried about what would happen when we bumped into Susan at the park, but acting decisively turned out to be the right move. It was a good decision to consult with my husband about the troubles with Susan. Working together as a couple on therapy allowed us to meet our 2 daughters. I've come to understand that not valuing people comes back to you, just like Susan.
Mom, come here quickly. Mom, you're slow.
Maya and Emma are smiling brightly, beckoning me over. I ran to catch up and hugged them tightly. With Maya and Emma, and my husband, I want to cherish these happy days and live life to the fullest.